Well, hello. Here we are back again with questions with Seamus, and I have a great question here today that came in just today. I'm going to read it at length. Thanks for whoever sent it in. So I think it's a great question and really interesting to think about. So the question is, do you think there is a point at which content creators should move away from creating so much beginner material and start creating more varied content for people at the intermediate advanced stages of learning? What genre or type of content would you be most excited to see people create? I also add, personally, I would love to see translations of writers like Poe and Lord Dunsany. I don't think there'll ever be a point where we don't need more beginner materials. One of the problems that faces us for ancient Greek and Latin in terms of things people can read and watch, but I'm just going to think about reading particularly at the moment, is the body of materials. The body of materials for something like for a majority language, for English, is just vast. Like, just think of a giant block. The body of materials for something like ancient Greek is tree-shaped. And what I mean by that is, up the top you have high register literary type materials. So the ancient Greek writings that are preserved are predominantly high register prose, high register poetry, those kinds of things. That's the bulk of what we have. And then we have a trunk, we have a narrower section that ranges from that kind of complex to simple things, and a range of things in there, some written for beginners, some not, some just various types. We have some bulges at different levels of that tree, particularly thanks to the papyri. And then at the bottom, you have this kind of, the roots flare out, where people have made beginner materials of various types. But what that shape ought to look like for most languages, at least in terms of creating content, it should be some kind of pyramid or mountain. That is, learners need tons and tons of easy material, varied easy material, easy in different ways, and they just need so much of it. And so that's kind of what's going on with the Latin novella movement. And if you read some of the posts by Lance Piantagiani, he talks particularly about this need for really very, very restricted vocabulary novellas. In my view, I have a little bit of a disagreement with him about how restricted that should be. It seems to me he thinks we should have very restricted and then so many novellas that you can. I mean, I kind of agree, but also we do need each level of that pyramid. We do need content at all levels. So at what stage should content creators start creating more varied intermediate and advanced materials? Well, whenever they want, I would say. In Latin, we have more and more everyday novellas, which is great. Mostly being produced by Latin teachers, Latin school teachers in particular. I would love to see some more intermediate type reading materials. So one of the most advanced novellas we have is Pugio Bruti. More things at that level, and then even more things at all the way up. And so if you talk about restricting particular types of complexity, vocabulary is one of the best to restrict, and then you can manage vocabulary even while you have complex or uncomplex syntax. So just measuring the vocabulary, you want things at the 100 word, you want things at the 200 word, you want things at 500 word, you want things at 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, you want things all the way up to about 10,000 words. That is 10,000 distinct lexical items. That's an advanced text. That's an advanced speaker reading that kind of work. But to create content up here is quite difficult. Even to create content for intermediates is demanding. To create content for beginners is demanding, but in a different way. So we need all these things, and we need more and more variety. And we certainly need it for Greek, especially. There's a real need for Greek materials. And at the same time, we also need a huge variety of genres and types and content. You want novellas, but you also want novels. One of the great problems of, if you write a Latin novel, like there's that one novel today, or now a series, I forget who it's by and its author's name. and its title, but it's written way up here. It's a complex Latin novel. Your readership is quite limited, but we do need we need a full range of texts to develop a literary culture of Latin and ancient Greek that will help people read everything. And if you want to read about teen romance, teen romance. If you want to read about vampires, vampires. If you want to read about modern crime, modern crime. If you want to read historical fiction, historical fiction. The more variety we have, the more things that are interesting, the more things that people can read, and the more levels we have, the more things people will read. So all which is to say, if you are someone interested in writing Greek or Latin, go and make whatever you want. If you want to make it, that's going to drive you to create content, to author new materials. If you're in a teaching context, create what you want, but also create what your students will use. Don't worry necessarily about the Latin world out there, the Greek world out there, but what will your students be interested in? How can you and your interests meet your students and their needs and their interests? Because I'm pretty sure that if you can map those two things in your immediate context, the broader historical languages communities will be interested. And just write more. I want to come back. I've got some time. I mean, not that there's a time limit on this, but to this question of translation, should we translate someone like Poe? Yes. One of the interesting things is we have a lot of Greek translated into other languages. So if you want to read a diglot edition, that is a bilingual edition, like the Lobes, but you can read Greek works translated into Latin. But there's very few works that you can read, for example, translators from something else into ancient Greek. This is another area where we could see more works. I would love to see ancient Latin writings translated into ancient Greek and presented in a bilingual format. So there's tons to do. If you want to be doing it, please get out there. And if you are doing it, get in touch with me. I'd love to have an interview with you on my blog and talk about what you're doing, what you're writing, what you're creating, and how people can support you. That's it from me. I'm probably going to go and do some writing myself now, feeling very inspired, have a number of story ideas that I'd like to move along the trajectory. Valete et eroste.